Hi, my name is Elizabeth Harris, and I am a registered dietitian and certified intuitive eating counselor. And I help women reimagine their relationships with food, movement, and their bodies and shift the focus from eating for weight to eating for well being. And I'm so excited to share with Pearl today.
Hello, sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out to let you back in. Stuck in a storm of a relationship. Lost my fire. Oh, and I forgot about me for way too long. But it's rolled on. Now there ain't no shade around here. Once you leave the clouds, you're under. Ain't it funny how there ain't no rain? All clear. Why'd it take so long to leave you in the rearview mirror? Now nobody gonna steal my sunshine or turn my blue sky gray. All I know is at the end of the day, wildflowers grow when there ain't no.
Hey everybody, it's Pearl again with another Conversations with Pearl, and I'm so excited to bring you some more amazing conversation around self-care. And today we have our special guest, Elizabeth Harris. She is a dietitian, intuitive eating counselor, entrepreneur, and co-host of the podcast Wellness Rebranded. She's passionate about empowering women to opt out of the diet culture and reimagine their relationships with food, movement, and their bodies. So by shifting the focus from losing weight to elevating well-being, Elizabeth helps women learn to eat intuitively, trust themselves, their food choices, and build health promoting habits on their own terms. I love that. Her motto is self-care, not self-control, which is such a great motto because food is meant to be enjoyed. Movement should be happy, making you feel a wonderful happiness. And we've all got better things to do than count those carbs. So Elizabeth holds a master's degree in nutrition from the University of Southern California. Oh, I used to go to their games all the time. In her spare time, you'll find her keeping backyard bees. Oh, I can't wait to hear about this. Gardening, reading voraciously, and traveling the world with her husband and 3 teenagers, hitting every available farmer's market along the way. So I cannot wait for this conversation. Welcome, Elizabeth, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's so
Excited
great
to
to
be
have you. And you're coming in from California, I'm assuming, no?
No, actually, I'm not. I live in Maryland. I did a distance program before COVID made it cool.
Oh, I love that. I love that. What part of Maryland you at?
I'm in Annapolis.
Okay. I used to live in Ashburn, Virginia, so know all about Annapolis and
Oh,
love
okay.
that area. So pretty. I was there
Awesome.
for 13 years, been in Florida now for 17 years. So I miss it up there. I miss the change of seasons except for winter.
I'm with you on that. I could do without winter too.
So excited to have you to the show. So tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit about what led you to becoming a dietitian and empowering women to truly understand that it's not all about counting the calories and counting the carbs.
Yeah. So I won't go back too far to the very beginning, but I will say my first career was in something completely unrelated and different. I studied Russian language in college and kind of worked doing things related to that for a while. But I was always really passionate about nutrition and wellness and healthy, active lifestyle. And so at some point, I decided to go back to school, get a master's degree in nutrition. And I always really wanted to work in health promotion. I knew that that was sort of what I was aiming for and what I wanted to do. And when I graduated, I immediately went into private practice. And I thought at the time that in order to kind of have a successful private practice in nutrition, I really probably was going to need to focus on weight loss. And so I started doing that for, I always say, sort of a hot second. I hated it. I did not like it. It just didn't feel authentic to me to sort of really focus on it. But also I noticed that I could be working with people who could be making all sorts of really great changes to their food, to their exercise. But if the number on the scale didn't move as fast as they wanted or how they wanted, people would start to feel frustrated and would say things to me like, Elizabeth, it's not working. And I would be thinking, but of course it's working. You're making all these great changes that are absolutely going to impact your health. And so that made me just feel sad and realize something was kind of like off with that approach. And at the same time, my kids at that point were kind of in middle and high school. And I just started to notice how many people in our orbit had really fragile relationships with food and their bodies. And I just sort of sat back and noticed the parallels between dieting and disordered eating and some of these struggles with relationship with food and body. And I just really had to, it just was really, really obvious to me that I wanted to put a different message about nutrition and health and self-care out there, for the world at large, but also my kids were watching what I was doing. And it was important to me to shift the narrative around it, to just a more positive, empowering, having a happy, healthy relationship with food. So I dug into intuitive eating, the research, and I pretty much have never looked back.
I love that. And I love everything you said about that too. So my background in coach, I was a health and wellness coach as well. And I grew into more of a life coach because my clients would come in here and they'd sit with me and they'd be like, I want you to talk to my friend because you're such a great coach. You don't make me feel bad when I've not had a good week on my, on the program and da 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 da. And I found myself sitting with clients having tea or coffee because I'm not a coffee drinker and realizing there's more to this. And like you said, there's more about the mindset. And I share this story all the time on the show here that I didn't, I have I still have the scale with me. It tells you your body fat, how much water you're carrying, everything. It's a very expensive scale. But when my clients would come in and sit with me, I wouldn't put them on the scale right away and it just freaked them out. They're like, don't you want to know my weight? I'm like, we'll get to that before our appointment's over, but I want to know about you. Like, why are you here? What have you done before? What about that did you feel didn't work? And I would ask him, okay, so no matter what program you do, if you follow the rules and do everything right, you should lose the weight. But what's life like for you? So you don't have to come back to somebody like me in the future. I don't want you to yo-yo and all that. And they would be like, what are you asking me these questions for? And I loved it because I share the story that a lady I had, she'd been divorced for 10 years and she wanted to meet a husband. She wanted to meet somebody in her life. She was tired of being single by herself. And so we did this whole project where she had to write out what he looked like, what he did, all these things. And then the next week she had to draw a picture of him. And so, she did great in the plan. And I ran into it at a grocery store about 6 months or so afterwards. And she's like, I need you to meet somebody. And here comes this guy that she drew the picture of. It was so amazing. And I was like, I've met you before. He's like, what? I'm like, just go ask her. But I loved, Elizabeth, that you do that because it's not about the number on the scale. And my business coach, Julie, if she's listening, we did a session. We have our Shiro League every Sunday evening, which is a community of women. We get together every Sunday night, 8 to 9 Eastern time. And we call it the Shiro League. And it's an amazing group of women supporting each other through joys, through challenges, whatever happening where we're at that time during the meeting. And we were talking about the weight thing. And I'm like, I don't believe in weighing yourself every day. And they're like, like on the other side of the screen, if you can see me go, sit back, not every day. I'm like, listen, I believe your body works in a 7-day kind of cycle. And I believe pick one day a week and weigh yourself that one day, because depending on what you ate the night before could show up differently on the scale the next morning. Because I know my body, if I eat beef, it takes me 3 days to process the beef, so I know it's going to show up differently on the scale. They're like, what? I'm like, and then I really freaked them out when I said, yes, my day is Friday. And if I forget to do it Friday, I don't get to do it till the next Friday. And they're like, what? I'm like, that's just where I am. That's how much I believe in more than what that number is on the scale. And I love, Elizabeth, that you touched on that. That is so powerful because it really is that intuitive thinking,
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, I actually encourage my clients not to weigh themselves at all and to break up with the scale, because I describe it as the tail that wags the dog. Well, first of all, wouldn't it be great if we could get to a place where our bodies were telling us how we feel instead of that number, right? Because most people have some sort of reaction to that number, good, bad, or otherwise, right? But what's it really telling you? Your relationship with gravity, but it's not it doesn't equal health. It doesn't equal your worth or value. I just, I would rather help people shift to a place where they're kind of how they feel is coming from their body, not an external source like the scale.
I love that. I mean, for me, it's sort of like most of the time it's just my body. And I will tell you, I think I've missed being on the scale the past 3 weeks. I'm like, but
yeah, it sounds like you have a very healthy relationship with it.
I do. I mean, and it's actually right here in my office. So it's not like I don't see it every day,
Yeah.
But literally I'm like, I'm the same way. It's like, I love what you said about that's like the dog, the tail of the dog. I'm like, that's so powerful. And I'm like, that's so true because sometimes people, and the thing is like, and from the coaching you do is that if that number is not going that way, it can send you down a rabbit hole that is just not good for your mindset, not good for your health, all of those things. So how do you help your clients? Because the scale is a big thing in this world. It is the tail that we carry around with us. How do you help them embrace that? What are some of the things you do? I remember I had one client that she would weigh herself every day. And like twice a day sometimes. And I was like, listen, I had to break it down small steps for her. I would let her do it once a day and then, we'd cut it back. And then she still was, I called her cheating with the scale, like checking out. Yeah. So I told her like, either you stop, I love that you're being honest with me. Either we find a way to break this habit or I'm going to ask you to bring me your scale. And when you don't show up for that appointment, I'm going to show up at your house and pick it up for you. Right. So how do you help people? Like, cause sometimes, like I said, they get so wrapped up about, I have to be on the scale. I have to know what that number is. How do you walk them through that? Because I know there's some programs out there that encourage people to get on that scale every day. Yeah. Drives me batty.
Badly. Yeah, I think it's about, well, first of all, really sometimes a slow process, definitely meeting people where they're at, exactly as you're saying. It's not like when someone comes in day one, I say you have to get rid of your scale and you can never get on it again. I mean, I'm never telling you have to do that anyway. But it's really helping people think about and understand their relationship with it, their relationship with food, and really talking about diet culture and why are we placing so much significance on the scale? What does it really truly mean to us? And are those actually even our own beliefs and values about sort of bodies and health or well-being, or are those just what we've been taught from diet culture? And what's the impact of that in your life on your, your well-being and how you feel about yourself each day? And there's a lot of trial and error, right? I mean, sometimes people are really trying and committing to stay away from the scale, and then inevitably I'll get a message. I got on the scale today, Elizabeth. It was not a good idea, and we talk about it, and it's really unpacking that. What prompted you to get on it? What would it have meant? No matter, if you had seen this number versus that number, what meaning are you attaching to that and why? And then what impact did it have on you? And do you want to allow it to have that impact? So it's really honestly asking lots and lots of questions and helping people think about it differently. I think it's just ingrained in our culture to weigh yourself every day or use it as a way to kind of check in or monitor yourself. But what if you actually focus on caring for yourself instead? And when you shift the focus to caring for yourself, is it actually caring for yourself in the best way if you allow that thing to have this huge negative impact and influence over you?
And you're right. Like, it's really about like caring for yourself. I love that you remind us of that because and that's going to be a priority. And oftentimes women especially struggle with like that caring for myself, and then they also, it's funny, you were talking about with you today. I was just speaking with my friend before I was sharing with you before we hopped on, Karsta. We were sharing about how, that mindset, we feel like that mindset, we have to have these things and these things are so, so important for us. But, authentically, is that really, do you really need that scale? Right? Do you really need that? What is your relationship and what with that's telling you I need that thing in my life,
Right. And is that, one thing that I always try to really help people understand is that dieting behaviors are often the opposite of health promoting behaviors, right? Dieting tends to lead to all or nothing behaviors and negative self-talk and negative body image. And so often we're told to cut out just bunches and bunches of foods that actually are nutritious, nutrient dense, good for you foods. And people start to feel paralyzed, especially if someone has done a lot of different diets and all the quote unquote rules start to conflict with each other. And then it makes it feel as though eating in a way that supports your body is unattainable or confusing or overly rigid. And really it's not. And so it's just shifting to a different way of approaching it.
I think that's so, it's that, like we said, that whole mindset of shifting how you're approaching it, finding a different way. And then also what I like too is like recognizing like, what is the trigger that's telling you need that confirmation on this thing, as you call it, on this tail that we have. I love that you remind us about that. So a little bit, I want to know, so with your clients, you walk through them with this, is there a particular, because you talk about no counting carbs and all that kind of thing. Walk us through that. Like what type of, you hear all kinds of programs out there. There's a strict carb program, which, I call the keto program, the Dr. Atkins in the Skies program, and I remember my husband was doing that program. I'm like, that's so bad for your heart. Do you understand how bad that is for your heart? And so there's all these options out there. How do you help your clients walk through the best thing for them? Like what are some of the things, your top 3 choices for somebody you're working with?
Yeah, I think the first one is really getting clear on and understanding your past experiences with food and what dieting has really done or not done for you. And, that dieting cycle is very, very predictable of we feel badly or we want to focus on our health. So we go on a diet, we cut out, we restrict a bunch of foods. We start feeling deprived, we start having cravings. All this biology kicks in to drive you to eat because your body's trying to keep you alive. We quote unquote give in, overeat, feel badly, go back. And the cycle just plays out over and over again. And I think the narrative in the world is, well, you just didn't have enough willpower, or you didn't have enough self-control. And really it's, no, actually dieting doesn't work. People don't fail diets fail people. And so the first step of it is just really helping someone not feel that shame and guilt around perhaps some of their past experiences choosing different dieting plans. I would say it's also the next thing is really helping people unlearn a lot of those dieting rules. I always say kind of the one thing that diets all have in common, even though there are so many different ones, is that they all take your focus outside of your body, right? Your focus is on the rules, what you're supposed to quote unquote eat, what you're not supposed to eat, on the number on the scale, on how your jeans are fitting. All of that is outside of you. I want to help people tune into their bodies and really what does hunger feel like in your body? What does fullness feel like? How's your digestion? How's the food making you feel? And how do you want to feel? And so that's really that next step, is that building body attunement piece.
I love, that's something my husband and I had this whole conversation with yesterday. So we go to the same office for our primary care doctors, but I see the husband, he sees the wife. The husband loves that I'm very much into what I put in my body. I'm very much into the type of vitamins I take. And, he knows that I don't like to take prescription drugs and all those things, where his doctor, the wife, is so opposite. She's like, you shouldn't eat. She's telling my husband he shouldn't eat fruit. I'm like, what? Maybe you shouldn't eat fruit. I'm like, well, because he's diabetic. I'm like, but you can count, you haven't been diabetic all your life. We can
balance your meals,
right? And I'm like, and there's fruits you can eat that are not high in sugar. I'm like, yeah, don't eat the banana when you can have strawberries or berries of some sort. Like, there's a whole big difference there. And so I had made these overnight oats, and it was just like a little bit of oatmeal, some yogurt. We don't like chia seeds. So we didn't put that in there. I think I put a little bit of almond milk in there. And then what else did I put in there? And then I put this fruit on top, right? Like I took one banana and sliced it between 4 jars of overnight oats and put a handful of berries in each and stuff like that. I didn't even put honey or anything in there to sweeten it up, because we're good with the yogurt, right? And he's like, I can't have that. I'm like, what do you mean you can't have this? There's like, it's not like it's a big thing of it. It's just like, a little
Yeah.
bit. I'm like, what do you mean you can't have this? I see you eat yogurt all the time. Well, because it's too high in carbs. I'm like, Charles, there's like a quarter of a cup of oatmeal in there. There's like hardly any, and he goes, but you
Yeah.
put fruit in there. I'm like, oh my gosh. He goes, I'm like, and then I'll tell him I'm going to go with the doctor. And then I remind myself, oh no, I can't do that. Cause last time I went, cause he said he's going to stop taking vitamins because we have this vitamin line that we take. It's powder based. You put it with water, you drink it, and it's got like the sugar of a grape in it, maybe if it's even got that much sugar. And so when I'm like, he stopped taking the vitamins, he's got a bad hip. I'm like, and that's his hip has gotten worse, the pain. And she was like, well, Pearl, I don't believe in vitamins. I'm like, oh my God, I just want to go. Can I slap myself? So, it's hard when you've got two different thought processes in the house, right? And you're talking about our past experiences, right? So, like I said, he had done the version of Atkins when Atkins was in way back when. And, I was like whole food, real food eating. There was a program that I did that was very strict, protein. No, you couldn't have fruit and like I did that at one time too. But my thing is, when you have a household like that, right? And so I'm sure you go through this with some of your clients. When you're in a household and like you have teenage kids, you understand this part too. And you have so many different elements of what everybody's eating. Like how can you help your clients with managing that? Like, oh, my kid wants to eat this, but this one wants to eat that, but I know I have to eat this way. How do you handle that?
Yeah. Well, so my goal is to help everybody get to a point where, the truth is all foods can fit in a healthful diet, right? Even if somebody has diabetes, they can still eat fruit or carbs. They just need to learn how to balance their meals and sort of, manage it that way. Of course, if somebody has a food allergy or, an illness that prevents you from eating a certain food, that's a very specific circumstance. But I really want to make it a lot easier for everyone to eat in a way that feels good by, for the most part, unless you have one of those very special circumstances, including all foods in your diet without those fearful dieting based restrictions that just aren't necessary. And so hopefully, when I'm working with a client, I want to get you to the point where you're making one meal for your whole family. Maybe there needs to be some small adjustment for a particular person if they have a specific medical need, but really, I want you to be able to go into a restaurant, feel like you can order anything off the menu, and then listen to your hunger and fullness cues and your digestion and feel good eating it. So we are taking, medical concerns like that into account with intuitive eating in my approach, but really I'm trained as a dietitian to make people's diets as inclusive as possible, because that's how we get our nutrient needs met, through a wide variety of foods. That's how we support our gut health. That's really is how we support our health and well-being, by eating a wide variety of foods, and then also eating other kind of maybe more fun or less nutrient dense foods without guilt, without stress, without shame, right? Because those detract from our health and well-being. So it's really shifting the way that we look at it. So much of kind of the traditional diet culture approach to food is about restriction and scarcity and, a lot of fear mongering. And I'm trying to help people get out of that narrative. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I think it really does. And I think too, I like how you share that there is, and that's what, I mean, when I lost over 60 pounds, it's been almost 10 years ago now. And I pretty much, up until we lost our son last July in a car accident, up until then, I pretty much was doing really well, with some challenges with menopause creeping in there, as we all know we have to deal with. And so I remember when I was really like focused in on everything, and then it just kind of carried forward once I reached my goal. And my kids were teenagers at the time, and my one son played football. So the schedule was just crazy with everything, practices and games and things like that. So I used to do this great thing. I called it dine-in drive-through. My crock pot, now they have these, air fryers and stuff like that. They didn't have those back then, but my crock pot became my friend. I would just make healthy stuff in there and, and my friends like, you're eating that? I'm like, yeah, it's all made with good, healthy stuff in there for you. And then the cool thing was, so my kids could come home and they could just pick out of it. And then the other stuff that I knew I wanted with salad or whatever with it, I would have that. But maybe if I knew they wanted rice, I'd maybe make them, I'm not a rice girl, but would make them rice or whatever. So yeah, I totally agree with you. That's why I wanted you to answer that question, because there is a way you can make one meal for the whole family. You just have to be open to learning those new ways, I think, is the big thing too. I know that one of the clients I worked with, her background, I don't remember exactly what it was, but what is it? I don't know if it was like it was a Middle Eastern background where the basically the moms did all the cooking and it was rice and beans all the time. And she's like, I just can't do this because we're eating all this. I'm like, so let them cook it and you eat what you know is safe for you. And then she's like, but if I don't eat the other stuff, then you're being rude. And I was like, I could never help her break that mindset. And she got stuck on that. So Elizabeth, how do you help in that situation when there's an ethnic background and this is how they cook and you're not, you shouldn't not eat that because that's being rude. How do you help them like adjust to that?
Yeah, well, I think first by honoring it, right? If that is your cultural experience, that's valid and real. But is there a way you can do it that also would serve and honor your body? So maybe you have a few polite bites, so you're not being rude. Maybe you say to the person, this is so delicious. I'm going to have a couple of bites now. May I take the rest home with me and enjoy it at a time when I'm hungrier? Or, so I think it's kind of looking for the workaround while validating the belief and the experience and finding what's the thing that's going to work for you so that you're not eating it when you're not hungry, or if you don't really want it or not at that particular moment. How do you honor your own body's needs and well-being, but still be mindful and deferential to
That's
some
a
of those
great, I love that. That's a great example of how to walk through something like that comes up. It reminds me too that I used to love, if was going somewhere, was being invited for dinner, they're like, oh, don't bring anything, but I wasn't sure what they were making. I always brought a salad that had all the stuff in it I knew I could eat, including protein. And I would tell my friends, I'm like, nobody's ever going to turn me away from bringing a salad or anything, and if they did, I'm sorry, but at least I knew I could eat it. And I, like you said, I would take little bites of, the other stuff if I didn't want to have it or it wasn't something that was healthy for me. I love that you share that too, because it's important. So for the listeners to hear that too, is you can do life every day. You don't have to be so restricted with everything. You don't have to say, I can't go or I can't do.
Yeah.
I can do this by choosing to do that. Right. So I love that you gave that example. It's
So one of the things that I really am passionate about helping people do is zoom out on health, right? I think in our culture, we're so conditioned to think it's all about weight. It's this restrictive way of eating. It's this very punishing way of exercising without realizing that often those approaches are actually detracting from your health and well-being in other ways. So if your diet is so restrictive from a weight loss perspective, right? Not necessarily if you have a food allergy or something like that, that you can't go out and enjoy a meal with a friend or a family member because you're in your head counting, tabulating calories, or worrying about what you can or can't eat, or stressing that I'm just going to overdo it with the bread basket the second it comes out. Well, that's causing stress and guilt, which is increasing your cortisol and detracting from your health in another way. So can we zoom out on health so that it's sort of that sweet spot where physical, mental, and emotional well-being overlap? And I always say your approach to nutrition and movement really should enrich and enhance your life. If it's detracting from it in other ways, probably that's not actually the best approach for you. And so how might we be able to shift it in a way that's more supportive of your whole health and well-being?
That's a great example. My friends, to this day, I still do this because I love to go out with my friends. And that was one thing for me that I would not worry about that. I'd be like, okay, where are we going?
Yeah.
Like, but we might go here. I'm like, it's okay. I can make it work. Don't worry about it. But the one thing they all started catching on to me was when we'd sit down, I would always tell them, for whatever reason, if they came to me first, I'm like, can you come to me last? because I would order, like, if I wanted to have a steak, I would say, I want the steak, but can you not cook it in the butter? And, and my friends, they all started catching on. Oh, we know what she's doing. And I'm like, because the whole thing for me was, at first I had to learn this trick for me. Because at first I felt like everybody was looking at me when I was ordering, and I felt like, oh, I can't tell them I don't want this or that on my food. Right. And I think also in my mind at the time, until I really wrapped my head around, I can do this and I can ask this, was wrapping my head around that it's okay to ask them to eliminate anything off your food that you're cooking. And so once I started doing that, and as I became a coach, I had a client one time said, they were going to this special restaurant. We were looking on there, and like, it was not a place that, like, you don't want to go eat there if you're on any kind of healthy looking way at whatever. And I'm like, well, find something on there that you like, and let's call the chef. And so we did. We called the chef, and the chef was so awesome. They like asked him to ask for me. They already had it listed. So when they said, my client said, Pearl, I felt like I was like the queen, because I walked in, they didn't even ask me what my order was. They just brought it to me. And I said, but really, what was a bigger feeling for you? And she's like, I actually could go to a place I didn't think I could go to, because I think it was all Southern fried stuff, and there was nothing on the menu. And she's like, I want to go, but, and she couldn't wrap her head around I'm like, just take little bites. She's like, I won't be able to do that, And so she recognized what her limits were. So when we did that, she's like, that was so powerful to know that I can do that no matter what I'm doing. I'm like, you don't have to not, like you just said, don't deprive yourself of life events, life things, and I love that you remind us of that. So I want to talk to you about the farm. And so how old are your kids?
My oldest one is about to turn 21, and then almost 19 and 16.
That's awesome. So I want to know, like, before we talk about your farm, how are your kids' response to healthy eating? I know teenagers, it can be crazy hard. What are their habits? Have they created because of what you're doing?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I would say before I shifted into intuitive eating and this more weight neutral approach to health, I probably did have fairly rigid views about nutrition. I really believed it was my job to get my children to eat healthy. And I've completely switched how I approach food in my house, and just really focusing on that relationship with food. And interesting or fascinating to me, I've really seen, in part they're getting older and, probably more mindful or make different choices just because of that. But as I have really emphasized having a happy, healthy relationship with food, I have observed their relationships with food changing. And that is really impactful and meaningful for me. And just as I'll give you a quick example of like a proud mom moment, is my one of my daughters was having lunch with a friend at school in high school. So maybe like a junior in high school or something. And it was the night before, or it was the day of homecoming or the night before. And she said, Mom, so-and-so today at lunch, was hardly eating any food, and said she couldn't eat carbs because she needed to kind of look good in her homecoming dress tonight. And she said, I just told her, you should just eat and feel good with food, and you're going to look good in your dress either way. And that was like, I just practically wanted to like jump out of my skin and cheer, because that is having a happy, healthy relationship with food and your body, and a really healthy mindset around it. So that was pretty cool.
I love that. That is so amazing. That it's fun to watch them, carry on those healthy habits, and we always have those proud moments. You go, oh, they were listening to me, or they were paying attention. I love that you said that, and that's tough in the schools. I had a mom bring me one of my most favorite clients ever. She was in middle school. And she was the tallest one in middle school, but she did ballet, and they kept saying, you should do basketball. She's like, I don't want to do basketball. I want to be a dancer. And then she was struggling with some weight. And so she brought her to me, and she said, I came to you, Pearl, because I've heard so much about your approach, about how everything's done. You don't do these these crazy fab like diet things. And I'm telling you, it's so fun to watch her. She's in her second year of college, and watching her create that relationship, like you said, with food, and create and understand how it's okay to eat certain things and how to manage that. She actually became an inspiration with her uncle, who lost over 100 pounds because of her. And both of them are doing, I'm so proud of all my clients. They're all doing really well, since I'm kind of not so much focused on that area. But it's so neat to watch our young girls especially start realizing that it's not about not eating anything so you can fit in a dress. And that for your daughter to say that to her friend, that's really, really cool. So I want to talk about the bee. I love everything about bees and backyard bees. My neighbor, I always go to him. In fact, I just messaged him the other day, and I'm like, hey, all this crazy weather we're having in Florida, we go cold, hot, cold, hot. My sinus are starting to act up. Can I get some honey from you? So I love that, the backyard bees and the gardening. So tell us about that. Tell us about, what kind of gardening do you do? And if somebody's just starting, how should they start?
Yeah, I would say just start, because it's really cool and fun. But I love plants, really. So I have tons of flower gardens around my house. I have a big vegetable garden that I just love. It makes me so happy to just go out and see things blooming and spend time in the dirt and outside in the sunshine and move around. And for me, that's a way of making movement fun. But also, I just really, really love plants. And the bees actually started, I didn't set out to be a beekeeper. My husband, for Mother's Day one year, got me everything one would need to be a beekeeper except for the bees. I have no idea why. I'd never spoken about doing it. He just said, I think that you would like this. And at the time I thought, I feel like you just gave me another job. I have no idea how to be a beekeeper. And that seems kind of overwhelming. So it sat in the garage for a whole year, and it just was kind of there, feeling like this thing that I really should do since he gave it to me. So I started reading about it and thought, all right, I'll give it a try. So I didn't really know what I was doing. I took a class, I started, and it's been really cool. I think bees are fascinating. I've really, really loved learning about them. I love going out in the hive. For me, it's very meditative. When you're out there, you're wearing all the gear, and you're maybe looking for the queen bee, or you're checking on what's happening. And it's kind of forces you to shut out everything else that's going on. You really lock in and pay attention on that. So I've found it to be, kind of meditative and therapeutic, and help quiet my mind a little bit. And then I love seeing them in the yard, and my plants do better than ever since I've started doing it. People ask all the time about the honey. We get some honey. Some years we don't get any. Some years we get, a good bit. We've never been like swimming in honey. But that's almost like not the main reason why I do it. I really enjoy it. I love having them in the yard. It's something cool to do for the environment. And I like a good challenge, and it definitely fits that category.
I think that's so cool. Your husband's like, I'm gonna get her. I'm like if my husband came home to me, I'd be like, what? What is this? Like, what do we do? But I think it's so cool that he thought outside the box. He actually, if you think about it, for me, and like listening to you talk about it, was he thought about what is your passion, and it's health and wellness. And so he thought, why not? And I could be, that would be me too at first, going, I don't know, I'm going to kind of set it over here. We'll figure this out. But then you went and followed through with it and said, what do I need to do? And I think that's so cool. Bees freak me out just because I'm allergic to so many of them that I just stay away from them as much as possible. But I love the honey from them. I think it's so cool. And I have a brown thumb. I got mad at my husband and my boys when we moved. So we downsized almost 2.5 years ago. And so I have one of those hydroponic gardens, and they got rid of it on me in the move. And I didn't know they did. I'm like, I went to go look for it because we're in a smaller home. And I thought, oh, this is perfect. I'll be outside. I got a great spot. And they're like, oh, we gave it away. I'm like, you did what?
I would be so sad.
I was so upset. I'm like, do you know what I spent on that? First of all, they're like, we just thought it was a plastic tube. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I just love that. And it's so much fun. I have a brown thumb, but I love to go to the local farms. Like you were saying, like I shared in your bio about when I'm driving, I'm like, oh, let's stop there. And I remember we were coming back from somewhere in Georgia one time. We got lost. And we end up by this farm. I'm like, oh my gosh, let's stop. And we got like all these peaches. And it was I just love little small markets. And for us right now, we have blueberries are coming into season. So we have blueberry farms and things like that. So I just love to go. We just finished our strawberry season. So it's so much fun. I love that. So we've been talking about self-care, about health and wellness and our relationship with food. So I want to talk to you about our Shiro League. It's our community of women. And so we're going to do a little shift here. I'm going to ask you some fun questions, Elizabeth.
Okay.
And so Shiro, it's not just a female version of a hero for me. I went through a time in my life where I didn't know who I was. I thought I was, my role was mom, wife, and my job. And then I went through an identity and destiny course. And through that 6-week of course, at the end, we were supposed to give our I am statement. And I was still saying I was a wife, a mom, and all these things. And my friend that I met in the course, she's like, I don't hear you talk about Pearl. Who is Pearl? So I went on this journey of figuring out who I was. And as I did that, I started realizing that I became stronger in believing that I could put myself first. I became stronger in believing that what I want in my life matters. And not that my husband, we've been together almost 40 years. He used to tell me, what do you want to do? Go do what you want to do. He was always so supportive. So it wasn't even him. It was more that mindset that what I grew up with was Granny took care of everything. So my mom took care of everything. So I should do that. Right. So as I became stronger in that, I started feeling happier. Like I started finding my happiness again about, I like doing things for me. I like having my voice. I like finding those things that bring me joy. And so as I did that, then I became more empowered to go, I think I want to be more than just a health and wellness coach. I think I want to be a coach in just helping women understand that we're not these roles that we think get put on our, these titles that we try to wear. Right. And so as I became empowered, I started my business and my friends started saying, Pearl, what's up with you? You look so different. Like you've got this glow, and I call it radiant. Like I had all this radiance around me, or you can call it glowing up. Right. And so as I did all that, then I started finding, I at 14 years old, I started working. 17 years old, I moved out of the house. I was always on my own. So I was always making sure I was paying my bills, right? Never having to go. I never stopped to figure out what I want to do. And as I did that, I realized that within me, I'd always wanted to be a teacher. Like was my thing, but I never went to be a teacher. But now I realize I loved coaching. I love bringing women together and empowering them to be like, you are more than a mom, a wife, an employee, if you're not married, whatever that is for you. And so finding that authentic self, right? That original self, right? So thinking about what that means, taking an example I gave Elizabeth as a Shiro, can you think back to a time in your life where, you were up against something tough and you had to like dig in deep and be like, I'm strong enough to get this. And then what happened as you went through that helped you become that Shiro again?
Yeah, of course. I'm sure that there are many of them. Probably, one of the big ones, or I guess more recent, is when I was going through my master's program in dietetics. I had, 3 kids in middle school. I was doing a master's program and doing the clinical internships for my dietetic rotations. And every time there were 8 different rotations, and every time before I even got to the rotations, I had to go find my own placements. There's a shortage of dietetic placements. So that was challenging in and of itself. But then each actual rotation there, really thick book of all these competencies you had to meet and create. And every single time I would get it, I would think, this is way too overwhelming. I can't do this. I should really just go focus on my kids. Got 7 million other things to do. What am I doing? And I just each time had to really, really dig deep and remember my why and remind myself that I can do hard things. And just can talk myself. What I learned about myself is my immediate reaction is often no. And I had to kind of shift that into I can. And I love a challenge. So I knew that, but I didn't realize how much my immediate reaction was no. And I would say that whole experience, everything about it pushed me so far outside my comfort zone. And then same becoming an entrepreneur that I look back, and often even some of my closest friends will say to me, you were so different than you were 10 years ago or whatever. And it really, I think, is because I just went so far outside my comfort zone in so many different ways and grew. I mean, that's where we grow, right?
I love that example. And you're right, because sometimes things will come and be like, oh, that's just too hard. Let me just go do the easy thing, and that's that fear, that front file cabinet in our head telling us all those things. When back here we know we got this, we can do this, just push through, get whatever help you need, and you can do it. And so I love that example. That's exactly what a Shiro is about. I just love that you shared that. So I want to play a little game with you, if you will do it with us. So in our Shiro League, we are working the first couple months of the year. We wanted them to really hone in on what they want for the year. And so one of the things we talked about is what brings them joy. And it's not just, getting up in the morning and yeah, your kids bring you joy, but really, truly to your core, what brings you joy? Now they had to create 10 items, Elizabeth. So I'm not going to ask you for 10, but could you give us your top 3 things that bring you joy and why do they bring you joy?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is just being active and being outside. I love, love, love hiking. I love walking. I love skiing. And I just like being out and active and getting sunshine. So that's the first thing. It makes my soul happy. The other one probably really is plants and flowers. And again, I guess there's a nature theme running through. I really do kind of love the gardening. And then, gosh, it's hard to pick just one more. I have several things going through my mind, but I will just a quick throwaway one is food. It's not an accident that I became dietitian. Like I really do love food. I love the creativity of it and the fun of it and all that. But really love of learning. I love to learn new things, taking on beekeeping, Russian language, getting a master's. Like I just love learning and reading, and I'm like a sponge for that. That makes me really happy.
I said, you're learning Russian?
Well, I did it, and not recently, but that was my major in college.
Wow. I bet you was that hard to learn?
Very, yes.
It seems like it would be. But I love the active and plant. So what's your favorite dish to make, Elizabeth?
Ooh. Probably soup. I make at least one pot of soup a week. I have all kinds of soup. I think it's such a convenient thing to keep in the freezer for a quick lunch. And I love all the different flavors and that and chocolate chip cookies, because why not?
Oh, I love a good chocolate chip cookie too. So my new favorite thing that I saw on TikTok was a salmon dish. So they took cauliflower rice and they stir fried it with some different seasonings. I do it with soy sauce and I'll throw like peppers or something in there. And then they layered it in a casserole dish and they took salmon, fresh salmon, they cut it up in chunks and they put that on top with some seasonings and stuff like that. And I've been the past couple weeks, it's just my husband and I at home. So I made that for us like 2 weeks ago. And he's like, the other day, he's like, do you have any salmon left? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what? Can you make that dish? So it was really, really good. And then
that sounds good.
I love that we're talking today about our relationship with food because I don't know what it is, but there's something about chocolate after dinner that since I can remember, I've always wanted chocolate after dinner. So I was like, how can I have something, a healthy version? So my husband found this really healthy Cool Whip. I can't remember what it's called. It's really good, clean Cool Whip. So he found that, and I take chocolate protein powder and I fold it in there like chocolate mousse, and I'll put that in the freezer. And every so often I just go take a spoonful out. Like that's my treat when I feel like I want chocolate. So I love that we're talking about food because that helps me get through that craving. And chocolate chip cookies. Who doesn't like a good chocolate chip cookie? So
right.
Now my next question is, so we do our grocery list, what we have to get done for the kids, our house. We have all these lists of to-dos, right? But have you ever created a not to-do list? And the not to-do list is putting those things on the list that keep you from being active, keep you from all the things that bring you joy. So if you had to create a top 3 not to-do list so that you can continue doing the things you enjoy, what would those 3 things be and why?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I love how you framed that. I've never framed it as a not to-do list. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is social media, just spending less time on social media. which, I'm on there for my business. I try not to spend too much time on there for personal reasons and just for obvious reasons. I think it probably, there's a lot of other things I'd rather engage in the real world. Number two, not to do. I think not to take things so seriously. It's okay if the dishes sit in the sink a little bit longer, or I don't get to everything on the to-do list each day, just to remember to sort of add in the fun. And the third thing is probably not to work all the time. I love, love, love what I do. I get tremendous enjoyment out of it, and I find it very rewarding. And it's very easy for me to just keep working all day and all night long. And I have to really intentionally put it down to focus on other things.
Those are really good, 3 good ones, especially social media. I mean, I'm like you, for my business. So I started this thing 2 weekends ago. We went to go visit some family that were going back to New York. They come down for the winter time. And it was a 3.5 hour ride each way. So normally I don't let my husband drive because I don't like us driving, but I wanted to get a head start on my social media posting so I wouldn't be tied to it. Like what you said, like the third one, like working all the time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to release the driving to him. I'm going to sit in the passenger seat. I'm going to post all my social media that I can post for the 3.5 hour drive. And I'm never going to look up and see what he's doing. And I did that and I did it going and coming. I got so much done that this past weekend, I decided we had nothing going on. We weren't going where had no commitments. So I took Saturday and Sunday and I did the rest of my social media posts I want to get done. So now it's done. So I'm really, really excited about that. And then like the podcast, like for this, like I decided I wanted to get as many podcasts done in the next 4 months so I could stop recording for the rest of the year, that the podcast recordings will carry me through the first quarter of next year. So I'm like, I'm all on track for that. So I love that you're saying, because now that I'm doing that, because social media is my thing too, my platform, it schedules on social media. So I'm finding myself, in fact, I've done so well with Elizabeth that I'm actually going, this is boring.
Yeah.
Like nobody has anything exciting happening going on.
That's awesome.
So I love that you share that. And then not taking things so seriously. That's a great one for us to remember, because I mean, before my son passed, he saw me always putting myself first, saw me, doing things for me so that I could show up for them better. And I was like, I can't change that differently. And let me tell you, for the listeners that are here, if I can tell you, don't take things seriously and you're not promised tomorrow. We literally talked to our son probably 10 minutes before he passed in his car accident. So we were really blessed we had that conversation, but you just don't know what tomorrow brings. So take care of these 3 examples that Elizabeth put on the not to-do list, and that way you can do the things that bring you joy. And so I love that you share those with us, Elizabeth. So now what I would like to see you do is, if you would mind sharing with everybody how they can reach out to you. We're going to put in the show notes as well, but let them know how they can best reach out to you. And if you have anything you want to give away, go ahead and share that with them.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So you can listen to my podcast, which is called Wellness Rebranded. I co-host that with a personal trainer and a mental health therapist, and it's all about rethinking wellness and zooming out on health outside of diet culture. That's a great place to find me. I'm on social media at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition. And you can also check out my website, elizabethharrisnutrition.com. And I have a free guide, which is 5 ways to get better at respecting your fullness cues, that I would be happy to share. So I'll make sure you have the link to that and you can put it in the show notes. Oh, and I also have a community if anyone wants to join me. It's called Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating on Facebook.
Yes. So everybody go check that out. We'll have them in the notes. You'll be able to click on any links that we'll have there for you as well. And I'm so excited to share that with everybody. All right. So you guys, I forewarned Elizabeth that we do these Better Questions, Better Life cards. These are 77 cards, Elizabeth, that a friend of mine and her friend did. I get no payback. You can go online and buy these, betterquestionsbetterlife.com. These are great cards that I meditate with, I'll journal with. Even my kids have used it for meditation. So I'm going to shuffle them. You tell me when to stop and we'll have you answer the card.
Okay, stop.
All right. So your question is, what would you do if you weren't afraid?
Hmm. I would go on safari. In Africa, as much as I love hiking, I'm very, very afraid of wildlife. And I sort of even am like not super comfortable around house cats. So I would love, love, love to go on safari, but I need to get over my fear of the wildlife.
Oh my gosh, I'm right there with you. Every time I see it, I'm like, I would love to do that, but what if the lion did this? Or what if that did that? In fact, I'm on a board of a nonprofit. It's called Unsilenced Voices. So they are national and international nonprofit, and they have a place in oh my gosh, I'm completely drawing I can't say it right. It's on the tip of my tongue, but they have a place in Africa that they help women come out of the brothels, create a business and, create sustaining income for themselves. And so next year, I think it's October, I'm going with them. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so cool. So I can't wait to do that. I might make my husband go along and we'll do a little vacation afterwards, but
That sounds amazing.
It's a great, great example. So I just loved having you on the show today. It's been such a blast. And I want to remind everybody, if you want to know more about Elizabeth, we'll put all the links there. If you want to know more about the Shiro League, all you have to do is email hello@ws, like Sam, living.com. That's hello@wsliving. And just put the word Shiro and we will get you all the links. We meet every Sunday evening from 8 to 9 p.m. You're allowed to come in. We have meditation once a month with special guests. And I'm going to talk with Elizabeth afterwards about having her come in as a special guest as well 1 month with us. So I just want to remind everybody again, as you go out into this world, that you come into this world, you are this tough oyster on the outside. You've got a lot of things to work on to open up that shell and find who you truly are and want to be on the inside. And when you do, you find your inner pearl to greatness. So have an amazing rest of your day. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hello, sunshine, good to see you again. Had to walk out